Since 2006, the Pickle Punks are here for you.
Well, considering it was a science movie, more than a science fiction movie, I feel, even though it was a fictional account of something that didn't happen. What were some of our complaints? Technical complaints. I think you guys have heard that one of my complaints was the potatoes. I felt like it in the movie, not necessarily in the book, of course, the amount of soil that was put down seemed very minimal for a root.
Yes, the amount of soil that was put down in the movie was insubstantial. Again, I hate to keep bringing up the book, but the book did cover that, and there was a much longer period spent gathering soil, producing soil, and it was a much deeper soil than, but, you know, they had to save time, I guess, in the movie. And watching Matt haul dirt back and forth inside of the habitat probably would have gotten old after a while.
Because if you just put your hand down and grab a bunch of grass and pull it up, those roots go deeper than the fucking potato roots.
It doesn't seem to me like it would significantly lengthen the movie to have a cutscene where the soil he's accumulated is a foot deep instead of 6 inches deep.
Yeah.
I had an issue with the... Oh, sorry, were we done talking about
I guess so.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's dirt. It's not a very exciting issue.
The weather identification.
Right.
On Earth, we can identify massive storms pretty quickly. And the very, very beginning of the movie, when they're forced to leave quickly, the onset seemed to be very quick. That they should have probably identified how disastrous the storm was further in advance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because, I mean, it's not like they were on Jupiter. You know, Jupiter has crazy storms all the time.
Right.
I'm not familiar with Mars, you know, to the point that I could say there aren't crazy storms like that. But I assumed it's a little bit less volatile.
Yeah, I'm gonna give that a big WTF.
Mm-hmm.
It did seem a little
big one
short term for them to get the information. Factors contributing to that would be the fact that there are only 8 satellites orbiting Mars.
Well,
currently. According to the movie.
What year was this filmed?
Oh, because those are the ones they had to retask and all that.
And they were even just observing him. They were talking about a 15-minute time period where they couldn't see him. And that's when they were focusing on him. So they don't have the same coverage. They don't have the same models, I would think.
See. Okay.
As, you know, they've spent years perfecting weather models on Earth, and they still can't get it right. What the hell are you doing, Brad?
Well, I'm podcasting. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
podcasting too.
It just looked like you were nuzzling your windscreen. So yeah, I would think that the weather modeling for Mars is not as advanced as the Earth weather modeling.
That's fair. Asked and answered again.
So my technical problem with the movie has to do with orbital mechanics. When they're going into the rendezvous period. And they use
late in the movie. Okay.
Late in the movie, they use their reaction thrusters to slow down, to put themselves into a lower orbit. Well, actually, not to slow down, but to put themselves into a lower orbit, which would actually cause them to speed up a little bit. And then they're going their speed together. What is that? The intercept speed was too high. They jettison air out of the front to slow themselves down. What they did not take into effect in the movie is the fact by slowing themselves down, they would also fall into a lower orbit. Although technically, now that I think about it, they kind of did take it into account, because when they were talking about the intercept distance being a gigantic distance, that was the effect of slowing down. They lost speed, but by losing speed, they fell closer to the planet and thus increased the distance.
So they were almost... He was below them, right? That would have made them closer. Or that's just...
No, he would have... Well, technically, it would have been above them at that point.
The ship...
Because they slowed down.
Oh, okay.
So when they slow down, they fall closer to the planet. So, yes, they're talking about we're going too fast, we're going to pass each other too quickly, but once they slow down, that's going to change their orbit. So now by changing the speed, they're going to lose distance. It's a very complex actual problem to meet up at the same speed and same distance with orbits that are not correct.
Yeah, we could barely even arrange meeting up for this podcast today.
I'm still not here.
And I think that was probably the most absurd part of the movie, where Matt Damon is
Iron Manning.
Yeah, using a hole in his spacesuit that I don't know. Would that have enough force to push him around in space like that? And
would it not like rip apart and become
definitely
bigger?
Push him in space. The suit would be designed not to tear because those are designed with metal fibers weaved inside of them to prevent rips, so that if there is a puncture, it doesn't increase in size. But the controlling it would be difficult, and any force in a zero-G environment is going to cause you to move, but to move as fast as he was.
Even flatulence?
Even flatulence.
In fact, I think, Jim, you told me when I was growing up at some point that one could be in space and hold a flashlight, turn it on, and the energy produced or the electrons or whatever coming off the light bulb would eventually make someone move in space. It would be enough to...
Jim lies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have no idea at this point that was even true.
Says it in a confident voice.
That is true because light acts as both a particle and a wave. And the photons actually have a striking force, and light will cause an object to move in space. It's just very, 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 very weak force. So it would take years to gain any speed. Faust, because I'm hosting.
All right. Brian, any critiques, concerns, technical considerations?
I confess that I don't know enough about the physics to mount a realistic complaint. I guess the main thought I'm having as I listen to you guys is that just the way that a viewer like us reacts to a science fiction movie.
Jim's eating a massive blueberry muffin. Right? Sorry to cut you off. But,
it's like being very quiet about it.
Okay. So you were saying, Brian?
It's like this intensely analytical reaction of were they right about this science or were they right about that science? Like, I think that's a really cool reaction that a viewer has, and it's not a reaction that a viewer has to a horror movie or to a romance. It's a reaction that someone has to a science fiction movie. So I'm interested in what it is about science fiction that is fictional, and this one's not so far in the future that it's too fictional for us to imagine as possible, but we have this very scientific, like, oh, that wouldn't work because of this minute law of physics. Like, that's a very cool reaction for an audience to have.
Yeah, like people went up in arms about gravity, right? And the realistic, like, is it the actual, just the fact that it's science fiction that it could be true?
Because women were in space.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez.
Well,
there goes half our audience.
It's because it has, it's one person. I think it's because it has the word science in front of it. I suppose if it was science horror.
Then, science horror. That sounds fun.
Sounds awesome.
You'd be like, no.
The friction of the knife would have slowed it down. It wouldn't have punctured the heart so quickly.
I guess you're saying it's an artifact of the genre that you can appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about all movies, I think, that involves suspension of disbelief. But with science fiction, there's an element of could this really happen that isn't suspended, and yet we know it's still a fiction. So I'm curious about where that balance is in the audience reaction.
Right, no, I can hear what you're saying. Yeah,
there may be a small amount of blueberry muffin on your rug right now.
That's all right.
I'm thinking back if there are any other things that I thought were a little ridiculous about the movie. No, right now I can't think of anything that was unusually inaccurate.
What about the oxygen generator?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the fact that he had a source of oxygen for that long. Where do you think that oxygen came from?
Well, I thought it was discussed in the book and the movie.
It was.
Oh.
But I figured you'd have a complaint about it that I could shoot down.
Oh, no, actually, I'm fine with that.
Oh, sure. All right.
It's the soil. That's my biggest complaint. Well, I didn't quite understand the chemistry around that, so I was like, I can't be critical because I barely have a concept of what they're even talking about.